I think we probably peaked this morning because I don't think I can live up to a really great introduction like that. Tony, I wish you would have just, come up a little bit short. Just reached like the normal Northeast quality of sermon or something. It would have been a little bit better. I'm just kidding. Tony's actually a really gifted communicator, if you can't tell already. Man, his sermons at Northeast are just amazing. So thank you. It's so fun to be here with y'all. It's so fun to be introduced by a friend and be with so many friends today. How many of you grew up in the Christian home where your mom or your dad was really concerned about your influences, like the music you listened to, the friends you hung out with? Yeah. I still remember a day that my mom found all of my secular music that I thought I'd hidden really well in my room. I grew up in one of those homes where like having an NSYNC CD was like a Shania Twain Come On Over CD was like a really big deal. It was like one of our first big conflicts when I was like in middle school. My parents cared a lot about that, and I'm glad that they cared a lot about that. I didn't really care that they cared about that at the time, but I see now how the people you spend time with influence you, the stuff you listen to influences you. But I've come to realize in adult life, there's a part of an influence in my life that I've not really thought about, that this shapes my character beyond all those things, and that's my work. You know, when you come home for dinner at night, one of the questions you often ask is, what'd you do today, or how was your day? And those are interesting questions. But I think it maybe even more interesting question is, who did you become today? Because the things you do something to you. The way you spend your time at work actually shapes your character and shapes your identity. I really realized this the first time probably 5 years ago. My first career was in higher ed. I spent about 10 years doing leadership development, working with college students, teaching classes, administration, that kind of stuff. And it was all I knew. It was my first career, and I loved it. I realize now that I was in way better shape because I got to play intramurals well on into adulthood, and I don't have that chance anymore. I loved being in an environment where curiosity and learning was part of the work. And something I realized now that was really special was my job. I was in charge of orientation and student activities, my first job. And in that role, you had to just interface with all these different departments on campus. And so I had to be collaborative to do my job successfully. And when one of my colleagues was struggling with something that wasn't even related to my job, I could go help them because, hey, we're all paid by the same university. I'm on a salary. It doesn't matter. Like, rising tides lift all boats. And so I felt like, to Tony's point earlier, I could be really generous with my time because we were all working together, all rowing in the same direction. Well, 7 years ago, I left higher ed, left a full-paying job, and started my own business, dove into leadership development. And man, it has been glorious. It's hard for me to imagine going back. I love the freedom with my time. I love getting to have life-changing conversations with people every day, getting to do work that taps into my strengths and passions. But I've also noticed how this work is actually forming my character differently than my previous job in higher ed. Some of those are good ways. I got trained as a coach, and one of the things about coaching, to be a good coach, you have to be really present in the moment and listen really well to other people. And I learned through my training that to do that, you can't just like flip a switch when a coaching call comes on. You can't just be like rushing around, hurried and distracted, then like become a Zen master for 45 minutes and then like go back to being crazy. It has to be a way of life. And so I really wanted to be good at my job, and so I tried to lean into being present and slowing down and listening really well. And a funny thing happened. Like, it actually worked. And I know for a fact that I'm a way more attentive parent and spouse and friend than I was 7 years ago because my work has shaped me into that kind of person. And that's I have my bad days, but mostly that's who I am wherever I go. It's not like something I turn on. So that's cool. And that's the end of the story. So that's all I was going to share. Actually, no. The truth is that the reason this came up for me as an important topic is I realized ways it was deforming my character. And the first way I noticed this was actually a lack of generosity with my time. In my previous job at a university, again, we're all on the same team. I'm making a salary, not a big one, but a steady salary. You know, how I spend my time is pretty up to me. As a solopreneur, how I spend my time determines if my kids are eating Chick-fil-A or rice and beans for dinner. Like, there's a very real opportunity cost to my time. And so I found myself trying to be a good steward, but really actually becoming more greedy and stingy with my time. Because everyone who comes is like, hey, Josh, I'd love to get coffee. I'm doing this calculus in the back of my head of like, all right, what's the likelihood this turns into a business engagement for me? What's the ROI? Which boxes does this check? This person's not really a value add. So how do I politely say no and kind of shuffle them off? Or this person's monopolizing the time. I got to go. Like, how do I shut this down and move on? Whereas before, it would have been much easier for me to just be generous with my time. And as I saw that, I honestly got a little concerned because it's like, man, as I think about becoming more like Jesus over the course of my life, this is one way the job is really working against that goal. And that's not it. I could go on. Man, being the face of a business, strangely, where you're trying to promote yourself as an expert on humility, which is like this weird paradoxical thing. Man, that has like pressure on my ego to want to be important, to want to be respected, to want to feel like I have it all together so people want to work with me. That's an ongoing challenge. The deformation that comes from actually hearing a lot of praise from my clients and feeling like I'm doing a great job, and the easy way to just like get my joy and identity from what my clients think of me and take me away from Jesus. So those are just three things, three deforming factors in my work that is great work that I would not change, that I think is like given to me from God. And yet the natural gravitational pull deforms my character away from who I want to be. Again, good things and bad things, but just naming like there are things in our work that shape us into who we are. And if we're not aware of that, we're not actually able to do anything about that. I'm not the first person to discover this tension. Thousands of years ago, when the people of Israel leave Egypt and God forms them as a new people at the foot of a mountain, he gives them laws. He thinks about not just the general principles that they should embody, but what are the practices, the things that they will do that we're actually going to shape them into a certain kind of people. So he doesn't just say, hey, rest is important, make sure you rest. He says, I want you to set aside one day every week for rest. No, that's crazy, but you should do it. He doesn't just say, remember that I'm going to take care of you. He says, 7 times a year, I want you to set aside times for feasting, where you just go back and remember my faithfulness to you. And so he institutes these rhythms in their body, into their calendar, to form them into a certain kind of people. People who are more rested, who are more dependent, who are more tuned into what God is doing. And the early church continues this on. Even though they let go of some of those festivals, they have these same processes of gathering together. You see in Acts chapter 2, every day the early church continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Basically, the early apostles looked at ancient Jewish tradition and said, all right, how do we modernize this? Let's invent a thing called a potluck. Let's get together and hang out. Let's do this on a regular basis, and that's going to form us into a certain kind of body. Jamie Smith argues in his book, You Are What You Love, which is a fantastic book, that these liturgies, is what he calls them, these rhythms and practices are habits. They shape our desires, and our desires shape everything else. If you spend 6 hours a day reading ESPN, you're going to become more of a competitively minded, sports-focused person. Just as if you spend 8 hours a day reading Cosmopolitan magazine or looking at Men's Health, you're going to become more of an image-focused person, right? It just happens. And so if that's true, that what we do does something to us, then wouldn't it make sense that the thing we spend most of our time doing, giving most of our energy to, which for most of us is paid or unpaid work, wouldn't it make sense that that would have a pretty big formative influence on us beyond the hour and a half we spend on a Sunday morning? I think this is a huge part of our life that's shaping us that we're just not thinking critically about. And so that's my big question for us to wrestle with today is, how is your work shaping you for good or for ill? If you are a stay-at-home mom who's spending your day wiping toddler butts, how is that making you more adaptable or more irritable? If you volunteer with the poor, how is that making you either more compassionate or more jaded? If your days are constantly just firefighting and dealing with crisis, how is that making you more reactive or more intentional? So today, that's what I want to do, is just to name these forces that are acting on your life to help you think about those things. In coaching, we say that awareness brings choice. Once you're aware of something, you have a choice what you want to do with that. And so let's just think about, what are those forces, the good ones, bad ones, and what can we do about that? Once you've named something, you've halfway tamed it. Being able to put language to something is really powerful. And what's fascinating about this dynamic is the same force can have opposite effects on different people. Encountering injustice might galvanize you to stand up and, take charge and be more bold, or it can make you more disengaged. Like, the narrative you have around that and the way you kind of metabolize that difficulty makes a big difference in terms of how it actually translates to you. There's a lot we can do with this that you're not going to get to do today, but just to kind of paint a picture of where you could go with this. Some of you have a lot of freedom over your work environment. You can actually change some of those factors. Some things that you see deforming you could actually pivot your work in a different way and use your work actually to make you into a better person. That's a really cool idea that we don't have time to get into today. If you don't have that power, though, you can think about spiritual disciplines that counteract those forces. Disciplines of engagement or abstinence that are going to pull you away from certain things or pull you towards certain things to help balance that out. Maybe if ego is a thing that you're concerned about, you can find some committees to serve on that you don't get any attention for. They pull you out of the limelight, and it's really good to discipline your ego in that way. If you find that you just lack compassion, maybe there are places you can serve with the least of these and engage in that population with your work that's going to, again, form you in that direction. There's ways you can build accountability around these things too that would shape you. But again, for today, what I want you to do is just to think about, who am I becoming, and what are the catalysts in my work that might be leading to that? And then, what do I want to do about that? That's the question for today. So on your worksheet here, I've overly simplified all of your life into three little rows. We're going to think about three forces that shape you at work. And there's more than these three, but just to start, these three things: the incentives in your work, your culture, and the people you encounter. You think about that, again, there's a couple ways that could be good or bad that shape you from that. The top list you'll see are maybe deformations of character, and the bottom list are positive things. So what I'd like you to do is to look through that list, and it's not comprehensive. It's just meant to trigger some thoughts. If you find something not on that list, feel free to add it. But just ask yourself the question, in this season of work, however long it's been for you, it's years, decades, months, whatever, which of these traits do I see popping up in myself more and more, good or bad? And if I kind of work backward, what might my incentives be contributing to this? How might the people I interact with be shaping this? And then you can just reflect on, what do I want to do with that? So I'm going to invite you to take maybe 3 to 5 minutes individually to do some reflection, and then discuss that as a table. That's how we're going to spend the rest of our time, really, is discussing. We'll come back together and wrap up. But really, this is about your table discussion and connecting there. Any questions before I release you to do that? Okay, have fun.